Hello, friends. Welcome. We are so excited to have you join this session of Innovate 2024. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Anna Miner, and I am Senior Enrollment Advisor here at Capture Higher Education. We have such an exciting panel for you all to join today. Let me start by introducing our incredible panelists who are going to speak about enrollment leaders, unfiltered insights into today's complex landscape. And I'd love to have you all introduce yourselves. Let's start with Leah Beth.
Hi, everyone. I'm Leah Beth Hubbard. I serve as the Assistant Vice President for Admissions at Lenore Ryan University.
And Chevy.
Uh, Hello, everybody. My name is Chevy Freiberger. I'm Vice President for Enrollment and Dean of Admission at Central College in Pella, Iowa, which is, just to give you a sense, it's 45 minutes southeast of our capital, Des Moines, and home to Pella Windows, if you have Pella Windows.
And Stacy.
Good afternoon, Stacy Lederman. I'm the Assistant Vice President for Admissions at St. John Fisher University, which is located just outside of Rochester, New York.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to tap into your expertise and just all of your knowledge. This is always a crowd favorite during the Innovate conference, so we're excited to just jump right in. So as we mentioned, we're looking at the complex landscape, and when isn't higher education complex? For a number of enrollment leaders who've been in this for quite a while, I think that we mark each year not by the year itself, but by what was happening that year. Like, oh, that was the year of prior, or that was COVID year, or that was the year we went back to work and COVID. That's the year. So there's always something. And last year was the FAFSA year. And it seems like there's always something that marks what's happening or what challenge we're facing in enrollment. And so I would love to kind of talk about that today. Tell me, let's start with Chevy. What is top of mind for you? What is one of the challenges that you think is a pressing challenge facing enrollment leaders today and in this coming year?
Yeah, Anna, it's funny that you mentioned you mark time in that way, and it feels like this year is actually going to be maybe a year with 2 years in it, right? As we think about what might be happening with the FAFSA, but starting to get a better sense of when that's going to launch. But one of the things that we've been seeing in the past few years as we have openings, and those of us that work with counselors, we're excited, obviously, to retain talent and build upon that and advance people in their careers. But it seems like lately, as we've gotten farther from the pandemic, you're getting back into a pattern of counselors not staying, right? And they're going to announce tomorrow they're leaving. Oh, wow. Okay, great. We're in the middle of our recruitment cycle, but so, on top of mind with me and our director of admission is always about retaining and attracting talent. We are seeing, the pool of people interested in this type of work isn't always as big as it used to be. And then also working with the ones that we do hire, training them. Here at Central College, we have had some of our senior counselors kind of move in different directions, go on to other institutions, which is really flattering, when they stay in the industry, right? They want to stay in higher education. But when you do bring on a staff that's younger, it's always reminding yourself going back to the basics, right? Because some of the things that you had with a senior counseling staff, and they know how to do travel and they know how to do the basics, you've got to, again, remind yourself, hey, we got to be patient and back up and kind of start from there. But that hiring and retaining talent is certainly top of mind here at Central. But Stacy and Leah Beth, I don't know if this is something you're encountering and what you're doing there as well.
Yeah, I think Chevy nailed it on the head, retaining talent, and then also the training that's necessary for our counselors. There are some things that'll never change in the world of admission. We are the relationship builders. We are the front door. to the institution. Some might say athletics, but I say admission is the front face. We'll go that way. Because we are always out and about, but you're relying your brand to rest in the hands of maybe a 23-year-old or a 26-year-old. And so proper etiquette, understanding that calling someone when you're running late to an appointment, that is necessary. The time of emails, you have to always check your emails. We get mad when our students don't, but sometimes our employees forget that when they're traveling, you're still working. You don't just get to go to the fair and the visits and then have your free time. You have cell phones. You're expected to maintain the day to day, and it can be grueling. And so we constantly face that and think about what are ways that we can entice them. So I always give my counselors, especially those who are on the road, if you have a parent or a sibling that wants to travel with you, that is fine with me. You still have to do your job, because we know loneliness happens. I've made some of my best friends on the road, but I was some few years ago, but started to save the time and decided not to. And so it's really think about, like, if you're sending them to a cool city, have you provided out the list of these are some really great places to eat? Here are some fun things to do. You know, are you giving them that freedom to also enjoy the perks of what a travel position can be like? The other big thing that we have done is we also bring them off the road. I require everyone, if you're 2 weeks on, you have to have 3 days off. Just to do a mental wellness check, because we also know mental health of admissions can get hard because we hear the stories, and how you process that is a little bit daunting. So those are some of the things that we do during travel season. Stacy, do you have other ideas?
Well, I was going to say that in addition to that, being able to, engage them, train them, make sure that we're meeting their needs while meeting those of our institutions, it really also comes into play that as managers, we're trying to figure out how can we utilize tools and partnerships in order to be most efficient in our roles. Because I think we've seen over time that we just add more and more layers to the recruitment cycle, to the needs that we have in working with our high schools or our community partners, our community colleges. So there's more that we need to ask individuals to do, and I'm sure none of us have added a plethora of staff members to our teams recently. So you're just asked to do a lot with the staff that you have. So not only training them well and engaging them in the process, but being able to help them know how to work most effectively with maximizing the tools and the partnerships that we have.
And that's such a great point that you make there, Stacy. You mentioned tools, and I think tools and tech is something that we constantly have to keep up with as enrollment leaders. Like, what's cutting edge? What's going to make us stand out? But not just that, but how can we facilitate the work? I think that's truly important too. How has tech transformed your approach to your enrollment strategy, to your day-to-day work, to your counselors' day-to-day work? What are you specifically doing to kind of, with all that you're adding onto the plate, how are you kind of facilitating and managing that? Like, what are some of the tools that you're using to kind of help do the job? Stacy?
I think in our case, we find that arming them with the information that they need to be effective when they're on the road having those conversations. So having a dashboard or a report or just having that access. We mentioned that they have cell phones. We want them to use them for calling if they're running late, but we also want them to be able to look up quickly, who from this school has been admitted or has applied, or what information are we waiting for, be able to work with that student. We have text messaging that's happening in all of our offices. So again, that's another layer that I think is available, but making sure that they quickly and easily have access to the information that will help them to best represent their universities and do their job effectively.
Yeah, I'd add to that. I just encourage the team to have fun with the technology. So, I'm a big proponent of Slate video. And, again, go out. We've got a beautiful campus. Take a quick, these aren't long videos, right? 20 seconds, but find a student, you in a video, and, maybe you're trying to encourage the student to visit or sign up for the next event. But again, just being creative and fun with the technology, I think can introduce something different in their day, right? Because again, it is about being great ambassadors of the institutions we work for. And as Leah Beth said, really building those relationships in an authentic way.
Yeah, and I think they're often, at least my counselors, are way more tech savvy than I am and know what's next. I'm still trying to figure out TikTok myself, right? I like the dances in it. But outside of that, like the influential pieces of it. So I also ask that when they're out talking with students or at that community college or at that high school, ask the students, like, tell me what you're interested in outside of just college. But what are your affinity groups right now? What are the fun things that you're involved in? Because that's what colleges need to know. Not only are we the face, but we're also the information givers to the institution to say what's coming down the road. So engage with that freshman in high school, engage with that sophomore. Oftentimes college recruitment is really senior, junior heavy this time of year, but that sophomore and freshman, they're going to be heavy in the next year. So we need to be prepared and engaging and knowing what they care about and finding out what's next. Like there is so many new gadgets and gizmos, and I sound very Ariel-ish from Disney right now, but there are so many that come about. We can't keep it. And I know students can't either. We often hear there's too many apps. How do I simplify my app choice? So we also need to be understanding what are the students using, not just what we're using.
Well, given that, talk to us a little bit about that. Chevy, you mentioned the Slate video, and Leah Beth, you're talking a little bit about like finding out where they are, like meeting them where they are. Tell us about some of the marketing strategies that you're adopting in response to this. What are some of the things that you're doing to meet students where they are?
Yeah, again, it's all about being authentic and genuine. So anything that is scripted or canned, they're going to immediately dismiss. And so, as we do our work at Central College, really leaning into our brand pillars, who we are, how we educate students here, how we do that in Pella, Iowa, we want to do that authentically. So, it's asking those questions that aren't always related to, hey, you want to study biology and you want to go on to be a doctor, but it's more about them, right? What's important to you? What things keep you busy in high school? What are you looking forward to this fall? What'd you do this summer? And I find that obviously it's not that stressful question of what do you want to study and those types of things, but it's like, hey, here's somebody that actually cares about me, they're interested in me, and you see how the student responds, right? And you go from there. So that's what I love about the work we do and the way that we market. And at the end of the day, you get a student that says, hey, I want to opt into that, right? I want to be part of that community.
Yeah, I think Chevy hit it on the nail. You got to speak their language. We have just undergone a whole new storyboarding marketing plan at Lenore Ryan. And we started that by I gave our acceptance letter to an incoming group of students. And I said, can you rewrite this? And I want you to use Gen Z language. Yeah. So the letter came out with Slay Queen, you did it. And so they took it really far and it was a lot of fun. And we actually then turned that letter into our SGA president sends a letter out to all of our incoming students using that jargon that says, Slay Queen, you did it. Welcome to the LR family. But what we did on top of that is then after they wrote that letter, I gave the letter to a group of parents of admitted students. And I said, okay, I want you to read what your students said. Can you interpret this for me? And then they rewrote it and we created a new acceptance letter. Because oftentimes in the world of admission, we're in higher education, which can be a little stagnant. We move a little slow. We use a lot of language in higher education that students and parents don't understand because it's our world. It's not theirs. So we just did a whole print campaign and I was working with our faculty and I said, you can change pictures. And you can tell me if the context is not appropriate, but you cannot change the word choice. And everyone went, why? And I was like, because we sound like snobs and our job is not to be a snob. Now, did I like get my hand snagged a little bit for that? Yes. Don't say the word snob if you're talking to faculty, pick a different word. But it is our job in admissions to make sure that we are meeting the needs of the next generation and that we are coming across for students to know that they can engage with us. And so sometimes you might have to get your hand smacked so that others understand you are marketing and telling the story in a way that to an audience that's understandable. So just always be thinking about those language choices.
I love that example of getting your hand slapped. It's perfect because, and it segues beautifully into my next question. Tell us a little bit about maybe a significant lesson that you learned from a campaign or an initiative that you launched. How does that influence your current practice? Leah Beth, I mean, that's a great example, but, and it doesn't have to be negative, like getting your hand slapped, but what's something that you're learning along the way? What are things that you're trying, whether they take off or whether they fail? What is the lesson learned and how's that influencing the direction that you're taking?
I think the big lesson that we have learned in admissions is the partnership piece that's so necessary. And it's not just partnership amongst your campus members. It is really easy for an institution to get siloed, but you have to remember that everything that is going out with the institution's name is a recruitment opportunity. So admission and marketing and athletics, you have to be on point. You have to know what each other are doing. So that way, if you are announcing deadlines or you're telling a big event, you are on point and they can market for you as quickly as you can. If your faculty are doing cool things, you need to be able to tell them. If they're going places, they need to share the message. So everything that is going out from the institution, you really need to know that, and you want to make sure that you're partnering with them. We also in admissions work with a ton of external partners. And you want to make sure that if you're working with Capture, they're saying the same thing. If you're working with ZME, they're using the same brand. I came into an instance with an admissions team and there were 2 different logos because one had not been updated yet. And sometimes we have vendors who get our logos that we're not partnering with and we don't even know they're using them. No one can tell me that story, right? So it is your job to just every 6 months kind of do that quick purview of where are students and parents getting their information, and is that the story that I want to tell? Because if you don't, there's going to be 2 deadlines out there. There's going to be multiple stories, and then you're no longer authentic. And as we've heard from Chevy and Stacy, these students want authentic recruitment. They don't want the next cool widget, gadget, or idea. Don't market to me, just give it to me up front. So I think you have to own your brand and be diligent with it.
Such a great example. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and I would say, to add to that, coming out of the pandemic, prior to the pandemic, we had programming that we may have been doing a while, certain aspects of like a scholar day, or we always do this on this program. Of course, the pandemic changed everything. We had to rethink. And so, what I really learned and our institution learned from that is really being adaptable and recognizing students want options. And so it isn't a one size fits all, but we really took a look at some of our visit days, some of the days that we'd always done it this way, right? We always bring students in at this time and we do this, this, and this. And again, that was blown up. And so we discovered some ways of doing programming that allowed us actually more options with students. We actually saw some of our visit days increase because of those options. And it actually saved the institution some money, right? Because we didn't have to do some of these other expensive things within the day. So I think remaining adaptable and providing those options for families is really important.
And I would just add to the idea of the collaboration on campus and really the coordination that you have. We found that if we can work most closely with our marketing team, with all of our partners, on and off campus, right? So we go together to meet with the deans of the various schools. We have meetings that we have with our partners to make sure that we're just in sync. So I think when we have united front and we take our lead in the recruitment process from those that are in charge of your brand and your recruitment, then it helps for everything to be together. The way that you have described is most successful in reaching students and parents. It eliminates any of that confusion in the marketplace, and I think it positions your university well.
And you're touching upon things that we've talked about throughout the Innovate conference, you know, the silos and just talking about collaboration and how important that is. And Leah Beth, you touched upon it. Let's talk a little bit about that. I feel like in the past, you know, admissions used to be left alone to its own, you know, devices and we did our thing, but now it really requires kind of across campus and a lot of collaboration. Could you share a little bit more about how you're partnering with other internal constituencies at your respective institutions on some of your, you know, outreach efforts, your marketing efforts, whatever it is to work together to attract more students?
Yeah, that is a great point. And you're going to have to get creative. The good thing about admissions teams is that we're often a lot of fun. And we're meant to be like, right? We can talk to a brick wall. That's what we do. And so when I first came over to Lenore Ryan University, we just started having networking events at 4 in the afternoon where we would offer an opportunity for anyone who wanted to meet the admission team or who had an idea and wanted to present it. We did this once a month for the fall semester. Take that back, for the spring semester, wrong time of year. And just said, come and meet us. And we offered food and drinks and had fun and cornhole boards and those kind of things. We're diligent with athletics in that we actually share marketing materials in recruitment. If there is a centerpiece that they need for a donor thing, I might buy it because I also need it for a centerpiece for my open house. And then they might say, well, we'll give you 200 tickets if you want to host an event and then have all the students come to the football game. And that's on us. So, you know, thinking of ways that it's mutually beneficial for both you and that department on the road with us. And this has been a game changer for faculty understanding the work that it takes to recruit a student. You know, oftentimes we're like, well, they don't get it, or they're like, well, you don't understand. So let's start working together. And so we take faculty to fairs with us. We actually ask our faculty to go into the community colleges and help teach courses. We have, whenever we have group visits coming about, the faculty will do mock classes and experiments with them. We also have opened our doors a lot to middle school students where we'll offer a creative day in STEM or a creative day in health sciences. While admission is hosting that, the faculty are really leading it. So we work in a lot of different ways to ensure that everyone understands the pressure that's on each other. And when we talk about goals, I don't build recruitment goals that are without academic affairs input. I know what athletics is striving to be. We're a Division II school, so that does matter in the numbers and the counts. And so you have to just make sure that student life knows for housing and what options are going to be about. And when you're showcasing out, do we have any residence halls available or not? Because sometimes you don't and you can't show it. So that open communication, but making it fun.
I think that's such a great story that you tell about all these different initiatives because I think we all think that everyone else thinks they know how to do enrollment, right? And now you're really kind of, you know, showing them what it really takes, what's the work that goes on behind the scenes and taking the mystery out of all of it and really showing, you know, it takes a village, right? It takes an entire village to bring in a student. Any other stories about
And I
collaboration?
wanted to add that another strategic partnership in addition to that with marketing and communications is really with our student financial services team, right? You can't recruit students or families to your institution without really having that partnership and that cross training. So we make sure that our admissions recruiters, all of the counselors in our office from entry level all the way up to the leaders are able to speak in the basic world of financial aid, to talk about scholarships, grants, affordability, And that really is something that we feel is so important in that recruitment conversation. We know also that those students and families are going to talk with the counselors in the student financial services area. So we've cross-trained them as well to know things about the admissions recruitment process. So you don't just talk about, my grant or my scholarship application, but they might say, we're looking forward to seeing you at our accepted student day here. They'll be able to talk to them about other potential things that they might apply for that are aid related. But I think that cross-training between our teams has really benefited us in the cycle of recruitment at Fisher.
And that
Right.
circles back to you. Oh, I'm so sorry, Chevy.
Well, I was just gonna say, you talk about it takes a village. We have really throughout our recruitment cycle for the past few years, we've allowed our campus, not only our coaches and faculty, but also our staff to, in a sense, adopt a student, right? And so they are periodically, we're kind of nudging them, but they are dropping notes, emails to parents, to students, and we've heard some really good feedback from incoming students of like, wow, I was really surprised. I got a note from so-and-so at the institution. So they're used to getting notes from admission. They're used to getting notes from the coaches, but it's like, wow, somebody who actually works in the information booth sent me a note and was telling me about the great success at Central College. So that's been a real tangible way in which we could invite the whole campus in. And what I like about that is this notion of it takes a village is it does. And so the success of enrollment depends on how the faculty are doing, how the coaches are doing. And so it's not just on Chevy and team, right? It's everything else along the way. And so together we can celebrate and together we can learn and do better. But our Adopt a Student program has been a really great initiative.
And everything that you're saying circles back to other things that we've talked about during this conference. Stacy, you were talking about cross-training folks in different departments. And so that they're talking about things other than their day-to-day things, like you said, with financial aid folks. And Chevy, you talked about, adopting a student where that's creating meaning in your work. And that's touching upon that. And these are all actually like internal strategies that are benefiting your workforce inside, which is kind of where we started this conversation. So it's really interesting to see how when you pull this all together, when you work all together, you're seeing that it's creating meaningful relationships. There's that authenticity piece. There's that genuineness. There's that adaptability of your workforce. I mean, so many of these things that you've been touching on, it's really incredible to see it all come back and come full circle through this conference and through these topics and conversations. Another thing that I'd love to talk about, you're all very experienced leaders, and you've seen a lot over the years, and a lot of folks in the audience are starting out, are looking to rise. Let's talk a little bit about kind of how you would advise people newer to the profession to grow in this profession and to face these challenges and to build resilience. What advice would each of you give to someone who's just kind of either starting out or a few years into admissions and enrollment work? What is your piece of advice?
My piece of advice would be, recognize if you're having a bad day or, I need to change careers. And I think sometimes people can't differentiate between that. And so that's even helpful for me at times, right? This is just a bad day, right? But, recognizing really the fundamentals of the work, right? Am I good at sales? Do I have a knack for this? Can I build and nurture and maintain relationships? The other thing is really just about just doing the basics well. Am I showing up on time? Am I over communicating? Am I through the way in which I do my work? Am I really showing joy and enthusiasm? And that's something that sometimes I think people don't realize. It's not about, it is about reaching your goal, right? We all have goals, but it's how you're getting there. And You know, if you constantly have to be reminded by your boss, like, hey, gosh, start time is this time. And, you know, those basics are really important, and those communicate a lot, I think, to leadership about your interest in this job and possible promotion.
Think don't be afraid. A lot of times, I think the next future generation is afraid to come up with a new idea. But don't just come up with an idea because you dreamed about it. What is the data behind it? What are you reading? There is a wonderful group of individuals within higher education and really enrollment, and that will help you, that will guide you, that will train you. There is material out there to read. There are conferences that you can attend there. And even if your company isn't, or your organization isn't allowing you to go to that conference, you can see the different data points that they're doing. You can read articles. So once you have an idea, vet that idea and find people outside of higher education to also be your friends, and throw them that idea and say, oh, I've really thought that we should offer a visit day for this and do these things to it. What did you think? And if they look at you like you're crazy, well, don't tell your boss, because they want to know that you've thought about it, that you're vetting it, and that you're not just tossing spaghetti on the wall. But also, if you're in a meeting and someone asks you your opinion and you've not vetted it, then just say, I dreamed of this idea. It's the honesty behind it, because we want next people to take over. We are constantly looking for who is my second, who is that person that I can lean into when it hits the fan, right? And who has the understanding for the world around them. And that would be my other big thing, is know your community outside of your workplace and outside of your institution, because we recruit not just for our school, but we also recruit for the workforce of tomorrow in our own areas. And so you need to know what are the fun things going on so that you can tell the students in Hickory, North Carolina, which is where Lenore Ryan is. These are the businesses that are there. These are the cool things when your families come to visit. I am always looking for that partner that knows my town well and has the social intelligence and the emotional intelligence to know when to speak up and know when not to talk, and then don't be a gossip stirrer. The worst thing that you can do for your career is to vent down or vent lateral. You vent up or you vent outside of your organization. But please don't ever do this in your office. That was kind of weird. Don't stir at the pot in your own office, because we are close. We all get connected, and you burn a bridge one place, you could burn it other places as well. So just remember, be yourself, be authentic, be the person that you want to lead you. And then that will help you grow.
Such
Yeah,
good.
I would combine those things. I think once you are able to do the basics well, and you're well respected within your own office in there, I would agree that getting connected in the community, being able to volunteer. We've seen a lot of employees on our team become invested by being involved with our local counselor association or our local ACAC, right? So being involved with the New York State ACAC has given them professional development opportunities that's furthered their interest in the profession. It's been good for our institution for them to be out there volunteering, and they've really learned things outside of St. John Fisher University, right? They understand, and they've built colleagues and networks outside that really help them to grow and develop in their role. So I think that's a good combination of both of your answers.
And thinking about all the things that you've shared today, we've touched upon so many different things. We talked about, advice, ideas, technologies, marketing, and this constant need to innovate and move forward. It's so appropriate. But when you start thinking about all these new endeavors, let's say in the last 5 years, that's in with the new. What about out with the old? What are some of the things that you think kind of are kind of passing or are kind of losing favor? Like yesterday, I think we heard that the QR code made a comeback. I don't know if any of you did that session, but yay for the QR code. Are there things that you feel are kind of losing favor or losing attention or kind of losing their luster in the admissions world versus some of the new things that you're doing? It's a tough question.
That is a tough one. I think there's a lot of things that we need to all stop and then reassess, but that's hard to do, to be the one to say stop, right? Because what if you do lose those 10 students because you stopped that? But that's where courageous leadership is necessary in enrollment today. So the one thing I would suggest every team to do is, does that feel like a gimmick? And if it feels like a gimmick, ask yourself, why are we doing it? But then also go back and look at the data. So if you are not making decisions using data today, so if you're not looking to say, okay, I sent out this campaign, or I did this event, or I held this social media platform, or I put this gift out there, and you're not tracking it and checking on it to say, what did it invest and how did it work? Then start today, because you should be always looking at the data. But we need to stop with the gimmicks, and we need to also bolster what is the importance of higher education. Higher education as a whole entity right now is facing this real fear of college apathy. So you all see it every day, where is it necessary to go to college anymore? What's the point of college? Is it going to be too much debt? So we as a community and as an organizations together, we really need to look at, are we always bolstering the value of higher education in the things that we're doing? And if anything that we're doing doesn't do that, then as a profession, we need to stop. So individual schools, I would say, if it's gimmicky, get out of it. Students don't like it. Then check your data, but also always remember what our mission in higher education is, and to share that value with the students, families, and communities.
Fantastic.
There might be
Yeah,
different things that
go ahead.
happen in various regions that you can give up in that region, but not overall. So when you, we still work with territory managers, and we rely on those that we feel are experts in maybe their area or in the audience that they're working with. So if something's not working in their area, we can go and test that. We can look at the data for their region and understand it doesn't have to be a decision for our entire recruitment plan. So the same way that we're going to segment our marketing by population, we're going to segment some of the things that we're willing to give up in certain regions. It's difficult for me to name one thing that I'd say, oh, that's dead in admissions today. But in some areas or regions, or for some of our recruiters, it hasn't worked, and we've allowed them to test out other strategic initiatives to see how that would play out in their area, and we've had success with that.
Yeah, I would add, I think it's hard to say what's dead, but it's more how is it evolving and changing. And I think print pieces for us at Central College, maybe you've had a practice, you've always kind of done the piece this way. It has to have this paper feel, you got to send it out to these students. But, when you start peeling this back, into Leah Beth's point, you look at the data and really becoming more courageous. I like this courageous decision-making of, you know what, we don't have to mail this to that many people, right? We're going to save, as we look at our budgets getting smaller, the price of postage going up, that is an okay risk. And, you need to start doing those things and taking those risks. Your CFO will be happier with you, right? Because you're going to be pulling that budget in. But some of the things that, maybe 10 years ago, that, it had to be this way. It's like, okay, no, we're starting to get into a different generation. We all know our websites are becoming the main source of information, and or TikTok, right? I mean, whatever you say on TikTok, that's it. But again, it's thinking about how that's changing, and it's going to be okay. And again, testing it, right? You know what, that didn't work well. We need to actually restore a little bit of that. But for us at Central, it's kind of that communication, those print pieces, what we're doing in what spaces, that's kind of evolving and changing.
And the good news for us today is that we do have tools that allow us to interact with students or with families where they are in the process.
Yeah.
You put in a plug for capture and behavioral engagement, and
True.
just take that idea and apply it to all of the strategies that you use across your recruitment cycle. Different things are working at different times for people depending on where they are at. So I really find that is beneficial to us, and appreciate some of that philosophy that we've been not able to only use in our partnership with Capture, but apply to many strategies in our shop.
Yeah, and again, some of that, you've got these extremists that, don't send any mail at all. I think mail is a little important, right? So it's this balance, right? But you don't have to give it up entirely. It's just how you're using it. But leaning into the tools, and of course, Capture has great tools to allow you to refine who you're mailing to and why.
Well, the topic today was about, looking into the complex landscape. And I always like to kind of, as we kind of are wrapping up this session, I like to think about the positive things. And I want to ask each of you, what are you looking forward to, or what are you getting excited about in enrollment? What might be coming down? It could be anything, but and what keeps you motivated? So like, what's the good stuff? Like, talk a little bit about the good stuff in the work that you do and the work that your institution is doing. What do you feel good about?
So I think we all got into probably this position as a whoops, how did that happen? And we kind of looked at it, and I always say I was called. Like, what is my calling? What is my purpose? And I was called to be an advocate. And so I noticed we had a question in there talking a little bit about leveling up and how do we help make sure our staff level up and get to that next life. And so when I was an admission counselor and first started, I was advocating for my students, and like I was their voice. And I have stories, as many of you do, of how transformational higher education can be, and how you helped a student who was homeless and now they're making way more money than you do, right? I was just visiting with some of my past students who were in New York City, and they were buying me dinner and movie pass or theater tickets. And I was like, gosh, help me. And so it's wonderful to see that change and see their excitement. But now as a leader, it's my job to do that with my staff and with my community and with the people. And so I am actually really excited for AI that's coming about. I'm excited to see our next generation, who is a little bit different than some of our millennial and Gen Xers, that we did it a certain way. And they're coming in with new ideas and they're excited, and to see them passionate about being advocates for their student. So how do I become an advocate for them? Knowing what their struggles are, knowing what they're passionate about. Like, those are the things of watching my team grow. So taking that question of how do I level up? I know my team. I know what they're excited about. I know what they're passionate about. I know what their goals are. And some of their goals are not higher education. Some of their goals are outside of traditional higher education. But guess what? Within higher education, we have marketing. We have student advisors. They may not stay in enrollment, but they might roll to a different part of the institution. And that's okay. So I think you just have to know your students. And what gets me excited, especially with AI coming into our world, is if for any of my liberal arts schools out there like I am, the skill sets that they say you're going to need to live through the AI world is liberal arts. So I'm excited to see liberal arts have a comeback. I'm wondering what we're going to be rebranded as. So 2 things: watching my team grow, and then seeing this transformation of skill sets necessary for tomorrow's workforce.
And I'm excited about some of the opportunities that exist on our campus and many of your campuses as well. So, I mean, we know that students are very interested in career-oriented outcomes, but there's other things that universities are focusing on, right? The well-being of the student or their development. So, seeing higher education itself evolve in terms of how we are educating students, and then the opportunity that we have to bring people into the fold for that. Because it goes back to what we mentioned in the very beginning. It comes back to the question of, is college worth it? Should I invest in this? And so excited to see that we're growing and changing in terms of what we're offering in higher ed in the space, and not just leading them to a strong career, but in terms of developing them as well-rounded, civically engaged individuals in so many areas of their future.
Yeah, both great answers. I don't know if I can, I would definitely agree with that. For me, working at an institution where, you believe so strongly in what we're doing, and you're seeing those transformational changes with students and families. And again, obviously very focused on outcomes, right? We all want to get a great job and earn a lot of money, but we're also teaching students how to think, how to be good citizens, how to really build their communities. And again, community has a lot of meaning, right? Local and beyond. So, when you see that, I've been at Central College 21 years, I'm excited to continue to do that and play this role in prospective student lives and parent lives. And it's really special. It's a like you said, it's an industry that's going through a lot of change. There's a lot of debate on value, but when you think about what you do, my wife works in finance, and so her day-to-day is very different than my day-to-day, right? So we come home and she's like, "What was your day like?" Well, as we know, all our days are very different. We could have, like today, we've got 200 some middle school students on campus, and so that's different. And my wife has three finance meetings or something, whatever she's doing. But there's just a lot of energy, and I love that I get to do this with a young team, an energetic team, with great student ambassadors. And it's just a special place. And so I'm just excited about the future and how we get to continue to shape that and be a part of it.
Thank you so much. I love when we can end on this like incredibly positive note because, I think we're so constantly being bombarded with, the challenges and everything and the news and the closure. I mean, there's just so much that to just bring it back to a place of positivity. And there's just some great stuff ahead for everyone, in spite of the challenges. So I'm seeing how my good friend Paige is here.
Hello, hello. We just want to thank you guys so much for such a great conversation. And I think one thing I'm noticing is just such excitement for the future. And you guys talked a lot about sort of leading your younger teams and driving us into this next phase of enrollment. And so one final question that I have for the group is just you started off, I think, Chevy, something that you talked about were the limited pool of people who are interested in starting careers in this field. So we're finding a lot of openings, maybe admissions counselors or recruiters who are moving on quickly. And then that pool is sometimes harder to fill. So I know a lot of people on this call are probably feeling the heat in whichever side of that. So do you guys have any ideas for how do we grow that pool? How do we promote this work that, to your point, Leah-Beth, some of us just fell into and we stayed? People, I think I've heard after however many years in admissions, you're in it for life. You either get in and out or you're just in it for life. So what are your ideas for the future? How do we inspire people and craft this as a career that you can build?
Yeah, well, again, I think it's being a great model and mentor, right? We have a great group of student ambassadors, right? These kids give the tours, they're living the story. And so, for me, it's working to really make sure they understand what they're doing, because we have one student ambassador and I think she's a sophomore. And someone said, "Cassie, what do you want to do after Central College?" She said, "I want to work in the admission office with Chevy." And I said, "Cassie, that's great, right?" But how often do you hear that? But I think, again, don't miss that opportunity with those student ambassadors to really understand you're not just giving a tour, right? This is the profession, right, that you are getting a glimpse of, right? So this isn't just your work study job, but this is a really special role at the college. And that's how it kind of started with me back in the 90s, right? Fell in love with it. I said, I like what's happening here, and I got into this. The other thing is we've had some success with an internship program. So even beyond our student ambassador pool, we pull interns in, and interns are a lot of work, right? But again, it kind of gives you this supply of possible employees to hire as you have transitions on your team. And so we've seen some of our student interns roll right in and become admission counselors. So those are some things that have worked well here at Central.
Great ideas.
I would also encourage all of you all to join your young professional organizations in your community, to look at workforce development opportunities. I sit on a lot of our community boards, so my job is not just higher education, right? I was literally just in a meeting with our workforce development board, our council of governments, all of the people who are helping our economy continue in the western part of North Carolina. Now, a lot of other reasons we are facing Helene. So if anyone is there, I do hope that you are safe and doing well. But so we're looking at a lot of those things. So I would say, don't just look in your institution, but also know what skill sets cross-reference really well with admission. And one of my favorite people to hire is actually high school counselors. So if any high school counselors wanting to jump the fence, Lenore Ryan University would love you. So just saying. So just know those skill sets and don't be afraid to go outside of the institution as well.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for such a great conversation. And again, one of our favorite parts of the conference. I think as someone who came from a campus to this role here at Capture, you guys make me miss being on a campus and hearing about the students and all the exciting things. So it's great to hear about all the things that you're doing, and we appreciate your time. So hopefully everyone got some great insights. If you have any additional questions, feel free to drop those and we'll be happy to kind of reach out to our panelists as needed. Thank you, Anna. Great job moderating.